Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sarah Psych. And today I want to talk about the idea of why it's important to continue your journey of self development after you've found your personality type. So, I've worked with hundreds of people in personality assessments and dozens of people in coaching. And the common reoccurring theme that I see is that many people, not all of them, but many people will find their personality type and then they're like, great, I know my type. And then they just kind of stop there and move on to the next part of their life. And in my opinion, personality is a tool that should be primarily used for understanding yourself and others and using that information to grow. So I want to talk about today how you can use this information to grow and why it's important that you do so. Let's get into it. A lot of you might be thinking, well, isn't this just kind of common sense? I mean, why else would you want to learn about personality type? But you'd actually be surprised. There's a lot of people who get into personality typology for the sake of fun, and there's nothing wrong with that because it's kind of like the gateway into learning a little bit more about yourself. But I'm a really big advocate for the idea of using personality typology to understand yourself and others in such a way that you can grow from learning this theory. I think that personality typology is exceptionally useful and practical when it comes to your life, not only in helping you communicate better with others, but helping you understand what your goals are, how you can approach those goals, what your weaknesses are, how you can manage those weaknesses. And of course, all of these things are going to depend on which personality type you are and the nuances of your individual personality within that personality type. But personality type is a great framework for understanding the journey that you should take. Think of it like this. Personality type is kind of like, imagine you're in one of the old Oriental mountains and you see those staircases like in the movies that go up all the way up the mountain, the thousand steps kind of thing. Personality type and finding your type is literally the first step on that thousand-step journey. And once you know your type, it's like saying, okay, I know what direction I should be moving in. Now I actually have to walk the rest of these steps by myself. The issue is that people will take that first step and then they'll be like, great, my journey's finished. I've done it. I've found my personality type. I know who I am. I don't need to do anything else. I don't need to adjust my own attitude or behavior. I don't need to compensate for anything. It's just great. Now I've found it. And I think that's the real problem is people will take their personality type and use it as a justification for why they act a certain way and why they can't or can do certain things. And I don't think that's the healthy way to look at it. Even looking at my own life, for example, as an INTJ, I want to work in psychology and even counseling, and that's a non-traditional field for INTJs. And if I were to just take my type and say, okay, this is who I am, how I act, and what I want based on my personality type, I'd end up in some sciencey kind of field. Not that psychology isn't sciencey, but it's more so that I'm willing to do what I want to do at the expense of it relating to my type. And I think that's a really good reason you can get into type, is understanding how is your journey going to differ from the normal journey or the regular journey that others might experience based on your preferences, and how can you interact with people along the path of that journey in a way that's going to be beneficial to you based on your personality type and their type, and how those two types are going to be interacting with each other. An analogy I like to use when it comes to discovering yourself and how that's going to be useful relating to personality type is, think of it like being a character in a role-playing video game. And in these types of games, you have different skill trees. Finding your personality type is like unlocking your skill tree, but it's not like immediately maxing out every skill in that skill tree. It's essentially saying, now I know these skills exist. Like you've unlocked the skill tree and you can see kind of from the beginning to the end all the things that you could achieve along the way. And you've put one point in the very beginning that says, great, I know what type I am and I know the archetype that I am and the general direction that I'm going to be moving in. But it's up to you to kind of build your own experience points. It's up to you to kind of become a better version of yourself and unlock those skills along the skill tree along the way, so you can become the best version of yourself that you can be. And that's why I'm such a huge advocate for the idea of coaching, and why I actually personally enjoy coaching far more than I do personality assessments. Because with personality assessments, yes, you're helping someone find themselves and understand themselves, but with coaching, you're taking that information and then applying it towards something. And this could just be like an extroverted thinking, practicality way of thinking about things. But for me, that is the most important thing that you can do with personality typology. And that's exactly what I did with myself. When I talk about my story and how I came to be who I am, the reason that I made such a huge shift in my life was because I discovered my personality type, my weaknesses, my strengths, my preferences, and then I was able to apply that. I've told many of you many times before that I lost 130 pounds, and part of me losing that weight was discovering the weaknesses associated with being an INTJ and repressed extroverted sensing. And when you bring a problem that you have to conscious awareness, that gives you control over it. And that applies to any of the personality types. So bring your own problems to conscious awareness so you can control them. Bring your own strengths to conscious awareness so you can apply them in a way that's going to be beneficial to your life. Earn the experience points along the level up your character type of thing so you can put skill points into those skill trees and become the best version of yourself that you can be, based on not only your personality type but who you are in relation to your type, because your individual personality outranks your personality type. Your personality type is just how you process information. Who you are is a separate thing from your personality type, or else we would just have 16 exactly the same types of people running around in the world. Now, of course, there's going to be common patterns, and you're going to find a lot of similarities between people of similar types, but that doesn't mean that you have to fit into some specific mold. But knowing your personality type, your interaction styles, your weaknesses, your strengths can be a huge boon, a huge benefit for putting yourself on the right road to go in the direction that you want, that will lead you to the goals that you want in life. Your personality type essentially isn't going to be a free pass for you to just do anything you want because of your personality type. I see like INTPs or ENTJs or any of the thinking dominant types all the time say, well, I'm just critical of other people because I'm a thinking type. And it's like, well, you don't get an excuse to be a jerk just because you're a thinking type. Or, the feeling types will come to me, especially like the FJ types, and they'll be like, oh, I can't say no because these people, they rely on me, these sorts of things. And it's like, well, you don't get an excuse to be a doormat just because you're an FJ type. Like, you have to work on your self-development. That is part of the journey of finding your type. Just because you understand that these are common traits that you're going to fall into doesn't give you an excuse to still fall into them now that you know they exist. In fact, it gives you less of an excuse. If you know you're a TJ type or a TP type, you have less of an excuse to be overly critical based on your thinking. If you know that you're an FE high type, you have less of an excuse to be a doormat because of your extroverted feeling, because now you know the reason why. And that doesn't mean that you can't make mistakes along the way, because that's part of the human experience. I'm not saying that, you can't make mistakes or you can't be human, but I am saying that if you know what the issue is, you now have power to do something about it. And that is the real takeaway when it comes to personality type and understanding yourself and understanding others. And this applies just as much to knowing other people in your life as it does to you as well. If you know someone and you have a good idea of their personality type, or at least a few of their characteristics, you now have a better frame of reference for interacting with that person if you want to. Doesn't mean you have to, doesn't mean you have to apply this to every single person you meet, but especially when it comes to romantic partners, friends, family, these sorts of things. I'm also a really big advocate for the idea that any two personality types can be in a relationship with each other, because I think that care for the other person outweighs any sort of communicational struggles that you might find with personality type. But understanding each other's personality type can be, again, a huge boon for overcoming the initial communication barriers that you're likely to find with personality types that don't immediately mesh. So the real takeaway here is just use your personality type to grow if you can. Find out your personality type, take some time to do that. But once you understand what your type is, or you have a good idea about that, start to apply it. Because when you do apply it, when you start to use this information in a meaningful way, you will see a huge turnaround in not only yourself, but your life in general. The things that you want to achieve are going to become easier. The struggles that you were fighting against will now become easier because you have conscious awareness of them. So yeah, that's my main point. My main takeaway is use this information in a meaningful way if you can. Don't just get stuck on the first step in a very long journey. All right, everybody, I hope you've enjoyed this discussion on why I think it's important to kind of apply personality type to your life. Stop and figure out your personality type, take some time to do that. But once you have that information, start to use it if you can. And don't be afraid to ask others for opinions on, how can I grow based on my personality type? What do you think are weaknesses that I have as an individual? It takes a lot of maturity to say, hey, what are my weaknesses, and then to not feel like you've been struck in the ego when someone tells you that. But you can also ask people, hey, what do you think are my strengths? Maybe I don't even recognize what my own strengths are. And you might find that these things don't perfectly mesh with your personality. When I ask people, hey, what are my strengths? Or when people tell me my strengths, they say, hey, you're a good listener and you're easy to talk to. And you think of an INTJ and you're like, oh, that's not the first thing that comes to mind. But your personality, again, can outweigh your individual type, because your type is just how you process information. It does not guarantee the outcome, only what happens on that first step. So I hope you've enjoyed this discussion. If you've used personality type to figure yourself out and grow as an individual, I'd love to hear your stories down in the comment section below. Other than that, I would like to remind people that I do have personality typing sessions as well as coaching available at my website at starpsych.com if you're interested in working with me to find out what your personality type is and what that means for you. This has been Sarah from Starpsych. Have a good one.